Hello again, Strokepup. Today I'm bringing you another video for Warhammer Chaosbane and for the Witch Hunter class for Jurgen Haider. This build has been something that people have been asking, and I also wanted to test myself. I decided to call it Sigmar's Torch, but in general it's a damage over time centric build using the Blessed Flames set and using the torch skill as the main source of damage. I've tested a lot of different things with a lot of different skills and god skills until I decided to stop on whatever you would see me using there. And there are some things that maybe could be different gear wise with the rings and amulets, and maybe you might want to rework your god skills or skills differently than me. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the build. It's definitely not something I would suggest for Chaos 10 and definitely not for solo Chaos 10. Maybe in a group, maybe it could be okay to do Chaos 10. Chaos 9 solo is already a struggle with the build because I lack survivability and eventually every now and then I might die in Chaos 9, whereas Chaos 8 is where the build seems to be fine. Where it seems to be doing okay without any problems and to kill most enemies quickly, especially some of the bigger enemies like this one. Sometimes you can end up melting them in seconds, which is nice. It's not as much damage as you can see on some of the more meta builds. For example, it's not as much damage as a Bragi build or a Conrad build, and it's definitely not as tanky as a Ult 1 set build on the Mage. But it's fun, it's nice, and it's a different take on this set compared to my Burning Bullets build, which came out, which I made as the first build for this guy when the DLC came out. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Keep in mind that the video is a little longer. And that means if you don't need all the information in the skills or god skills or gear segment, you would be free to skip. There's also a text version on my website, links normally in the description and in the comment section if you want them, if you want the text version, if you don't want to watch everything. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna start with the skills, then the god skills, then the gear, and then more gameplay. So for this build, the skills I've taken are as follows. I will first list them and then mention why I've taken them and what other options I've tried and what I think about those options. So here it does not matter which one you take. Pierce, Persecute, Castigate, I don't use it. It's 0 points, so it doesn't matter which one you put. If you rework the build, you might even be able to put another advanced skill there or another god skill there active, but yeah, pick anything. So Martyr Superior I'm using because it creates icons of Sigmar, and those icons of Sigmar give us damage with invocation. And this damage gets converted into damage over time. You might notice that this number here that says how much damage over time we get does not change. But I've checked my stats and my damage over time and my damage do grow equally. So not equally, but as my damage grows, so does my damage over time. So on the tooltip of barbs I might not see it, but let me quickly demonstrate it instead of just talking. Check my damage and damage over time, 4171,000. When I do this, it's 67 and 281,000. And if you look here, it still says 18,864. So this one doesn't seem to update well. I mean, every now and then I would see it changing if I'm really stacking more damage from items and things like that. But yeah, this is why we've taken Martyr Superior, because it creates icons of Sigmar when activated. This one, Condemn, I prefer the mastered version. I tried playing with the superior version, but I personally prefer the mastered version. It's nice, it slows them, it makes them take more damage for a few seconds, and for every condemned enemy that dies during the effect, all players gain health and energy, which helps a little bit with the sustain, and it also reduces the cooldowns, which is pretty nice, so we can cast Condemn more often, so we can cast Sacred Sigil more often, so we can cast Martyr more often. Sacred Sigil Superior, I normally used to play with I used to play with Sacred Sigil Mustard. But you can still take it, but it's gonna require some reworking of the god skills, but more about the god skills later. It's pretty nice. It makes the enemy take 50%. If you want more survivability, obviously taking the mastered version would be better, because it makes the enemies do less damage as well. This one also heals, whereas this one doesn't heal, and both of them would restore your energy. This one is duration 6 seconds, this one is also duration 6 seconds. This one is physical damage, this one is fire damage, and fire damage means it can benefit from this Holy Immolation. Extirpate Heroic, needless to say, use it. It's 0 points, it's your heroic skill for this set, for the flame set. Holy Torch Mastered, it's our spammy DPS skill. I like it, and if you think that you could sacrifice some points and go for Holy Torch Superior and put those points elsewhere, sure, you could do it. See, this one has a chance of creating Icon of Sigmar on impact, which means maybe it would result in higher damage. I've tested both of them and both of them work fine, so this is completely optional whether you want this that gives you less damage and burns for 7 seconds but has 20% chance to create an Icon of Sigmar, or whether you want this that does more damage and burns for 2 more seconds but doesn't have a chance to create Icon of Sigmar. Maybe this one would be the better one for the way I've set it up. So just experiment, I guess, see what works best for you. Now we've got Impose Penance, Hero of the Desert, Holy Immolation, Invocation, Barbs, and Duelist Chain Reaction. Duelist Chain Reaction you need to do invasions to unlock. You need to push your invasions and unlock it from here. If you're having difficulty on this Chaos 5, Chaos 5, Chaos 4 node here, on those 3 nodes, maybe you would really need this corruption resistance. If you're having problems, maybe get this corruption resistance and this corruption resistance and this corruption resistance. It depends what your build is, how much health drain you have, how much health regeneration, how much resistance to damage over time. More experienced players would be able to just get those nodes here and rush to here. Without needing to get this or this here, but to new players I would suggest get those nodes here, get those nodes here, get those nodes here and here, and then move on to Duelist Chain Reaction. Now Barbs, as you can see, it gives us damage, as I mentioned, based on... It gives us damage over time based on our damage, but it also reduces our damage. The bleeding thing we completely ignore, because we're not a physical bleeding build, but it still benefits us by increasing the damage over time. Whether it's better to go with or without Barbs, I think it's better to go with it, because... The more bonuses you stack from different buffs, the higher the increase of that damage over time you would notice on your stats here. Sometimes it would be like 1/4, 1/5 of your damage being added on top of it, of your damage over time, I mean. Then Invocation Mastered, it's nice. Icons of Sigmar grant more energy and have a greater chance of appearing. Damage increases for every nearby icon of Sigmar, which works very well with this and with Superior Holy Torch. Which I showed earlier. Holy Immolation, all fire damage deals extra damage to burning enemies, which applies to this, it applies to this one, it applies to that one. It doesn't apply to this one, but it's pretty decent. Then Hero of the Desert, a little bit of everything, and Impose Penance Mastered is 75% damage over time after killing a champion. If you think the 20 seconds is not enough, then maybe you can use the superior and then remove some points here, and then those points, if you do it like this, I'm gonna talk about it in the god skills, you might spend them elsewhere, such as for example getting Sacred Sigil Mastered, which is physical but at least makes the enemies do less damage. You can go to certain things over here, for example, for cooldowns and damage. And damage over time on the way. You can get some crits if you want, and damage to champions, or damage and energy, which I wouldn't get, or this one here, which is a little bit of crit damage also. For example, those points you can do something like this. or you can do something like this, but more about that later, in the God Skills segment. And I think we pretty much covered all the bases here. There's other things I've tried. Stigmatize Superior, and if you want, you can, as I said, you can try and do one alternative setup, which is this Superior Holy Torch, which gives you 5 points, and then maybe reduce this extra damage but get Stigmatize, and put Stigmatize here. Actually you would have to use this one, so you still have 4 points, but that's not how I like to play it. I mean, I'm not saying Holy Torch is Superior is bad. I'm saying I don't like Stigmatize as much. That's what I mean by telling you I don't like that type of playing. And I don't think there's a better passive to put instead of Holy Immolation out there, unless some of you consider something interesting, something else. For example, something like this one. Yeah. Let's move on to the legendary skills quickly. Obviously, legendary ranks are not something that all of you would have in the beginning, and I think some of the best things you can do for yourself and for your damage and survivability is legendary reinforcement. You have 1-2 skills with cooldown, so that might not seem like much. And maybe legendary reinforcement won't be something you would really want as much, but legendary endurance, crushing, and punishment, those three don't require skills with cooldown. And I think for a new player who is still on the low chaos ranks, survivability won't be that big of a problem, and you would rather go for punishment. Damage enemies have a chance to take more damage, and you probably would want to go for endurance eventually, because endurance is a buff you apply to yourself. Crushing is a debuff you apply to the enemy. So endurance is more useful in the early levels to new players than crushing. As I said, you apply this debuff to yourself, and that means regardless what enemy, if it's an enemy that doesn't have the debuff hits you, it's still good. Ideally, eventually you would have endurance and crushing and punishment and reinforcement, and then maybe start spending points into healing. Even rage is fun when you have enough points spare. You can put points into rage. Keep in mind the limit is 100 points into power, 100 points into chance. The only thing that's maybe bugged, maybe intentional, is rage can go over 100 power. It doesn't seem to have a cap. So that's it for the legendary ranks. Let's talk God skills next. As you probably saw in the previous segment, I've set up the God skills to only use the first God skill tree, which means people who don't own the God skill DLC would be able to benefit from this build. There's probably better ways to do it and to squeeze more damage if you include the second God skill tree. Maybe if you focus on stacking all the crit damage bonuses instead of the damage over time bonuses, but I always wanted to make a damage over time build for this set that's using certain things like Impulse Penance. On the other side of things, you have for damage over time, where was it? And there was another damage over time related thing here, but in general the damage over time related stuff is in this side for this skill tree. So it's kind of forcing you into using Mass Purification and Imperial Propaganda, which probably won't be bad. More icons of Sigmar means more damage, which with barbs would mean more damage over time in the end. But yeah, here's where damage over time is this side and this side. So that's what they had in mind for us as damage over time builds on that tree, and I thought it's better synergy if I go on the other side of things. Ideally, you might want to just remove those points here, all those points here, you might want to remove them and do something like this. Oops, no, I didn't mean those points. So this one went over here, if I'm not mistaken. This one went over here, and then I had 3 more points over here. So I was talking about removing those points here, and then maybe grabbing some points over here for more icons of Sigmar. But 75 or 50% damage over time seems like a better thing to me. See, if you do it like this, you can get some icons of Sigmar, yeah, 20% chance when you use a skill with cooldown, but we don't have spammy cooldown skills. And if you're gonna go that route, you would need to stack cooldown reduction, and that's just not the way to deal with it. But as I said, if someone doesn't want to impose Penance Mastered and wants to remove those points, that's 7 points. And as I mentioned, there's ways to go on about it. For example, more cooldown and damage, and some damage over time, but that would require some sacrifices. And since we are not using this, that's actually a point I need to remove from the build. You would have to spend it elsewhere. So yeah, since we need 1 more point, you're gonna have to probably sacrifice. What would be the best thing to sacrifice here to get that cooldown and damage? In fact, maybe it's just not worth it taking this damage here. Maybe you can just go grab something else. But yeah, if you don't want to go that route, you could do as I did earlier. And earlier, as you saw, I did something like this crit damage and then this crit damage. That gives you like 40% extra crit damage. It gives you actually 60% extra crit damage. It gives you 8% damage to champions, some damage, some energy. That's one way of doing things. Another way would be to go over here. See, with this, with those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, you get 40% crit damage. And that's not bad, in my opinion. That's actually pretty good. And then you can get bonus damage to champions with 2 more points, and then you have 1 point left, which there's not many choices. You can get HP, you can get damage over time somewhere. Where was it? HP damage. You can get damage, but not damage over time, I guess. Oh, damage over time here. And that's not a bad choice either. Or you cannot take this. You could maybe decide to go over here for that extra crit damage, which is kind of similar to what we did on the other side of things when we got 60 crit damage. But on the other side of things, you can unlock another god skill, a stronger version of this if you do it that way. So that's the option if you want Sacred Sigil. I guess. I mean, there's some flexibility, but yeah, this ended up becoming much longer than I wanted it to be. If you have some more questions, feel free to contact me if you want some suggestions in regards to implementing a build centered around a specific skill or a specific god skill, what I would do in that way. Feel free to ask me. I'm gonna try and provide you with some screenshots and some ideas how to do the god skills and skills. I don't have time to make all the videos I want immediately, and I've got a big backlog of videos, so at least if you contact me, I can try and maybe focus on doing the builds that you guys are interested in, and then do the other ones I want later. Now let's move on to the gear segment. Here we are at the gear segment, where I'm gonna mention what items and with what affixes you would want ideally in each SWAT. Obviously it's a Blessed Flames set build, so you want the full Blessed Flames set. And on the hat must have extra cooldown reduction, and in all armor pieces you want HP. You cannot get cooldown in any other armor that's not the helmet. So for the chest and legs you can get exactly the same things, and I think you always get armor regardless of what other roles you get. Armor I think is 100% chance to get it. So you want armor, obviously, there's not much you can do about it, but you want HP. HP in every piece is as high priority. In the helmet, cooldown is a little bit higher priority to me as HP, but I'd rather have cooldown and HP. On the Flames overcoat and Flames trousers, I would have armor, HP, and maybe health regeneration or cost reduction or energy as my priorities, but HP is the highest priority for those two pieces. For the boots, speed is not bad, but since we have Heroic Extirpate, we can just rely on that one for mobility, and it's not gonna be terrible if we do so. So yeah, let's talk about the other things you want here. I guess the exact same rules apply as those two, except that you could get movement speed on boots, but it's not that important. Whereas for the gauntlets, for the gloves, you can get damage over time, and you can get crit damage. And health drain is also nice. So my ideal rows would be something that gives me damage over time, HP as the three top priorities, and health drain as priority number 4. So I think damage over time and HP are equally important. I think health drain, it's good, it's amazing, and if you can get it, sure, that's nice. So look at this one, it's similar but without the health drain. And this one is similar without the health drain too. And this one, it just has less HP. It has less HP, but it has damage. See, what I'm using right now doesn't have damage, and I think this one here would be better choice for me. Maybe less HP, but it's gonna give me, I'm gonna quickly demonstrate it. So look at my damage over time, 165, and this is 40. And right now, if I were to equip this, it's telling me that my damage over time would be 1700 less, and that I would lose the 47 crit damage, and that my damage is gonna raise by 6000. So in theory, I should get less damage over time than 165k. But I think it should go higher. See, 168k, because the damage gives us damage over time as a result from barbs. That's why you want both damage and damage over time together with HP and health drain. Even if you sacrifice crit damage, 40% or so, I think it's worth it in the long run, because the more buffs you stack, the bigger the difference. Let me try and show you what I mean. So you can see right now I've got 2003 damage over time, and that's without including proccing of Impulse, Penance, Superior or Mastered, and not having that much icons of Sigmar around me, and not benefiting too much from some other things that can give us damage. So 203,000 damage over time. If I were to switch to those gauntlets, 199, so it was like 4k. But that's excluding, as I said, the bosses, killing a boss to give us some extra damage over time buff. So yeah, keep that in mind. I think I unnecessarily talked too much about this, so let's move on to the weapon and to the pistol. Cooldown reduction is a must-have, and on the pistol I would go for cooldown reduction and crit chance, high top priority together with damage. Ideally you would have HP, which I don't, so my perfect roll would be cooldown reduction, crit chance, damage, HP. That's 4 out of 6. Then I would probably take some things like armor piercing and health drain and maybe cost reduction or damage over time. In fact, damage over time is higher priority than cost reduction or anything else, even higher priority than armor piercing. So let's say cooldown reduction, crit chance, damage, damage over time, HP. That's your 5 things out of 6. And the other one, if you can get health drain, perfect. Then on the blade you can see you can get cooldown reduction, but I don't have it. I don't have it. I mean, see, ideally I would keep in mind you cannot get crit chance on a blade. You can only get crit chance on a pistol, and pistols get less crit damage, which means you can get like 40 something crit damage on a pistol, whereas on a blade you can get even 90% crit damage. That's why crit damage is more useful on a blade. Also, cooldown reduction is stronger on a blade, and if you have a very good saintly blade with cooldown, with damage over time, with HP, with crit damage, and maybe some health drain, you could get a very good result. The one I'm using right now, I'm only using it because it has health drain, and I decided to prioritize health drain and HP over the one that gives me cooldown reduction, because this build, yeah, it uses skills with cooldown and it relies on them a bit for the duelist chain reaction, and ideally I would have it, but it's more important for me to keep healing with health drain to at least try and survive, but ideally you would have all those things I mentioned. So something like this is not bad, but this one whacks damage over time. But yeah, if I were to list 6 things that I want: cooldown reduction, damage over time, HP, crit damage, health drain. That's my 6 ideal things for the Saintly Blade. Well, crit damage is probably gonna be the least important for the way I like to play the build. Now, for the Ring and Amulet, you can get exactly the same stats with one exception, where amulets can roll with armor, but you don't really want that roll. What you want on the amulet is cooldown reduction, crit chance, and HP and damage. Those 4 things are your top rows. Health drain as a 5th row, perfect. Then you have all 5 perfect rows. Things like crit damage are not bad, armor piercing not bad, cost reduction, but the top rows would be, as I mentioned, for both rings and amulets, they would be crit chance, damage, cooldown reduction, HP and health drain. Or damage over time instead of damage, it depends. I mean, damage still gives you damage over time, so maybe it's just better to stack that one. And this also brings us to the types of rings and amulets, and to the types of weapons. Saintly Blades is the weapon I like using here, and Depth of Flame is the one I like using here. I've tested other ones, I don't like the other ones as much. Maybe one time I could try and make a full Crusader's Flames build when they fix it, but right now Crusader's Flames doesn't work, so it's just unreliable. Right now, see, I'm using very bad rings. I'm using whatever is the best road and has reasonable affix on it. So this one gives us healing and HP. And if you have enough HP from items, which I don't, for example, as you saw, this one was missing HP, this one doesn't give me HP, this one doesn't give me HP, and this one doesn't give me HP. If I had enough HP, I wouldn't need Ring of Resurgence, which meant I could use something like Old Ring of Resonance, or maybe even use something like this one, Signet Ring of Burning. If I had a good rolled one, I would actually test it. It would go very well with that setup. Purple Signet is not bad, but it requires picking up Bloodlust Orbs, and unless they change it to increase the radius of it, I wouldn't go for it. But you might want to experiment. Endurance is okay, but with Endurance you're gonna die a lot. Endurance rings are rings where you're using basic skills to do the most of the damage, so don't use it. Because when you're using Endurance, you use the energy as a mana shield. So as you're taking damage, your energy is getting drained, and when you have no energy, this is useless, and you're never gonna have enough energy to spam Holy Torch. Something else that's not bad, fortification, but it's gonna reduce your damage. So when your damage is not high enough, and when you can't afford to lose 50% of it, then don't use that ring. Fortitude, on the other hand, is also a decent ring, but again requires picking up Bloodlust Orbs, and I think this needs to increase the pickup radius alongside this one. Ring of No is, I think, amazing. It heals you, it gives you energy, it works pretty nicely for this build. And on the amulet side of things, I'm not sure if it's a bug, but I haven't seen one of the amulets that the other heroes have, which gives you increased damage to nearby or far off enemies. And if this guy has similar items to Conrad, to the other human, to the soldier, then he should have something that gives you increased damage to far off enemies that are not near you, that are, I think, further than this range. So if the enemy is within this range of you, this circle around you, you won't do extra damage. But if it's further than that rough circle I'm drawing here with my cursor, then they would take extra damage, and it also gives you damage reduction. It doesn't seem to exist on this hero for now, maybe for balancing reasons, I don't know. Whereas things like the Mage, they have a Phase Shift Amulet, which has a reverse effect. Enemies near you take more damage, and you have the damage reduction. So in any case, if that amulet gets added to the game, if I'm just unlucky and not seeing it drop, then you might want to consider using it. If you're farming, something like Meadow of the Exemplar is pretty nice. Based on your crit chance, it gives you wood quality, but it only goes up to 500, and with the increase of wood quality, in relic hunts, upgrade relic hunts, it's kind of unnecessary. So a good road sacred farm meadow would probably be the best thing you can do to your build. And I'm not sure what I would consider good road from the ones I've got, but I told you what my perfect rows would be. I was experimenting when I was playing. Ideally I would probably wear the one with more crit chance, the one I'm showing you here. But yeah, try to prioritize the row size set. And I think that's pretty much it for those. Let's quickly show you about the blessings that you can experiment with. I would say if you're moving from a build that has damage and HP, which would look like this. This is how you get damage and HP. Actually, let's show you the more damage, less HP. So this is the maximum damage and HP you can get on a piece of equipment. Then as you change the number of green and the number of red, the more green, the more HP. You can see I got 2000 more HP, but lost 420 damage. And then I can lose another 420 damage and gain another 2000 more HP. And for new players that have problems surviving, this is your best bet. If you want a balanced version, then this is your best bet. And if you want most damage, this is your best bet. I was not using those. The only place where I was using those was... actually, I didn't use a single one of them. In every single piece of equipment, I used the crit damage one. Crit damage, damage over time, and HP. So if you want less crit damage but more HP, you do this. The damage over time will always be the same, up to 4000. But you can get between 8, 6 and 4000 HP. You can get 8, 12 and 16 crit damage per piece. The same way you do it like this. So this would give me now 6000 HP, 12 crit damage, and now this can give me 16 crit damage and 4000 HP. So mix and match, find a balance between HP. I try to have at least 300,000 HP, but the more the better, but also try to get some decent amount of crit damage. This is what I used. I would say first try playing it without this setup, with the red and green setup, and then maybe try it with the yellow and green and see how that works out for you. Keep in mind, when you're stacking damage, this would result in that damage converted to damage over time. but it would also reduce the damage by 30%. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope it didn't end up being too long of a video for you. And yeah, that should be it. Next you're gonna see some more gameplay footage. And here we are at the gameplay segment where I show you more of the build in action, and where I talk about how I like to rotate the skills, although there's not much of a rotation with this dude. Obviously you've got Condemn, that's something that debuffs the enemies, you might want to use that at the start. And then there's Martyr that can put some icons of Sigmar on the ground. You can start with those and then maybe use the trap, maybe not use the trap, it's up to you, but eventually you need to start spamming torches. And for mobility, as you can see, to move around the map, you've got your heroic skill. I normally try to keep it on ranged because all those bullets have chance to proc, and it's nice. And I like how it leaves trails with that skill, with that heroic skill. So yeah, we've got more burning enemies around us, giving us damage and things like that. In general, with our items, with the depth of flames, with the pistol, we do get some extra DPS based on how many enemies are burning around us. So the more enemies around us, the better our damage, the more burning enemies, let's say. So when you're one-on-one with certain enemy, especially a beefy enemy like that one, maybe it's better to just skip some of those beefy guys and not kill them and just ignore them. Because if you're speedrunning, if you want to do things quicker, skipping those big guys and just moving on would be a better choice. It would be you spending your time better. That means you would be finishing maps quicker, which means more relic chests per hour, instead of just wasting your time in one of those enemies, which probably won't give you as much wood as you would be by doing more maps per hour for more triple chests per hour. But in general, you can see some of the enemies that are not as beefy do die quickly. Even those big Chaosbanes do die quickly, because they're not as tanky as the knights, as the ones with shields. And you're gonna see in a moment how quickly we can melt the boss of this map. As you probably saw at the beginning, the Mutilate also got melted there. But yeah, I really like the build and I hope you would love it as well. It's my take on a damage over time build, which I wanted to do in a long while. So yeah, that's what it is right now. To get notified when I upload more content for this game or other games like this one, which would be wooters of all varieties, isometric, third-person ARPGs, wooter shooters and all sorts of wooters like that, you could subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on my content updates. And optionally, you can even join as a member of the Struck Club on YouTube as a channel member to get access to exclusive perks such as special emotes custom made by me, special badges custom made by me that represents how many months you have been a member for, as well as opt-in of editing tutorials that I can give for Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, as well as shoutouts and things like that. And I would like to use this part of the video to thank all my YouTube members and Twitch subscribers. Thank you for supporting the channel and keeping me going. Thank you also for watching this video, everyone. Keep it cool, Struck Club. Until next time, and goodbye.